Elena Marquez woke up every morning at 4 o'clock. The alarm on her old phone made a soft sound, and she opened her eyes in the darkness. Her small apartment was quiet. The walls were thin, and she could hear her neighbors snoring through them. She sat up slowly, feeling the pain in her back and knees. She was 58 years old, and her body reminded her of this fact every single day. She walked to the small bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. Her face had many lines now. Her hair, once black and shiny, was mostly gray. She tied it back in a simple bun and splashed cold water on her face. There was no time for hot water. There was never time for anything extra in Elena's life. By 4:30, she was on the bus. The streets of Boston were empty and dark. A few other workers sat on the bus with her. They were all tired. They were all going to jobs that started before the sun came up. Elena looked out the window and watched the city pass by. She had lived in America for 23 years now, but sometimes it still felt strange to her. Sometimes she still dreamed of the green mountains of her home in the Philippines. The bus stopped near the Harrington Conservatory of Music at 5:15. Elena stepped off and walked toward the big building. It was a beautiful place. The walls were made of old red bricks, and tall windows looked out onto the street. During the day, these windows glowed with warm light. Music floated out from them. Piano music, violin music, the sounds of young people learning to become artists. But at 5:15 in the morning, the building was dark and silent. Elena used her key to open the side door. She was always the first person to arrive. The security guard, old Mr. Patterson, would come at 6. The first students would come at 8. But Elena came at 5:15 because there was so much work to do. She walked down the long hallway, her footsteps echoing on the marble floor. She passed the practice rooms, the offices, the concert hall. Finally, she reached the cleaning closet and put on her blue uniform. The uniform was old and faded from many washings. On the front, there was a small patch that said Harrington Conservatory in gold letters. Elena looked at this patch every day. It was the only thing that connected her to this place of music. Her first job was to clean the main concert hall. It was a grand room with red velvet seats and golden decorations on the walls. On the stage, there was a piano. Not just any piano. It was a Steinway grand piano, worth more money than Elena would earn in 20 years of work. The piano was black and shiny, and its keys were white and perfect. Every morning Elena cleaned around this piano. She dusted the stage. She vacuumed the carpet. She polished the wooden railings. But she never touched the piano itself. She was not allowed to touch it. The piano was for the students, for the professors, for the famous musicians who sometimes came to perform. It was not for cleaning ladies. Still, every morning Elena would stand near the piano for a moment. She would look at the keys. She would remember a time, long ago, when her own fingers had danced across keys like these. She would remember the feeling of music flowing through her body, from her heart to her hands to the instrument. It was like remembering a dream from another life. Then she would shake her head, pick up her mop, and continue working. By 8 o'clock, the building was full of people. Students rushed through the hallways carrying instrument cases. Professors walked slowly, drinking coffee and talking about concerts and compositions. The air filled with sounds. Someone was playing scales on a flute. Someone else was practicing a difficult violin piece. From the practice rooms came the sound of pianos. Many pianos, all playing different songs at the same time. Elena moved through all of this like a ghost. Nobody looked at her. Nobody spoke to her. To the students and professors, she was invisible. She was just part of the building, like the walls or the floors. They walked past her without seeing her. They talked about music, about their futures, about their dreams. They never wondered if the woman with the mop might have dreams too. Sometimes a student would leave a mess in a practice room. Candy wrappers on the floor, empty coffee cups on the piano. Elena would clean it all up without complaint. Once a young man had spilled an entire bottle of soda on the floor of a practice room. When Elena came to clean it, he did not say sorry. He did not even look at her. He just kept playing his music while she got down on her knees and scrubbed the sticky floor. Elena did not get angry. She had learned, over many years, that anger was a luxury she could not afford. She had children to support, bills to pay, a mother back in the Philippines who needed medicine every month. So she kept her head down and kept working. She arrived before dawn and left after dark. She earned just enough money to survive and send a little back home. But sometimes, late at night when everyone was gone, Elena would allow herself to do something secret. She would walk into the concert hall and stand on the stage. She would look at the Steinway piano, its black surface glowing under the emergency lights, and she would imagine sitting at that piano. She would imagine playing the music that still lived inside her heart. She never actually sat down. She never touched the keys. That would be wrong. That would be breaking the rules. But she would stand there, sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for 10, just looking at the piano and remembering. She remembered her teacher, Mr. Santos, back in her village in the Philippines. He had been the first person to hear her play. She was only 7 years old then, playing on an old broken piano at the local church. Mr. Santos had stopped in the doorway and listened with wide eyes. After she finished, he had walked up to her and said, "Child, you have a gift from God." She remembered the hours and hours of practice, the competitions she had won, the scholarship to the music academy in Manila. She remembered being 17 years old, standing at the bus station with a suitcase in her hand, ready to start a new life as a musician. And then she remembered the phone call that changed everything. But that was 41 years ago. That was another life. Now she was just Alina the cleaning lady. She mopped floors. She emptied trash cans. She watched others live the life she should have had. For 11 years, this had been her routine at the Harrington Conservatory. Arrive before dawn, clean, watch, remember, leave after dark. Nobody knew her story. Nobody knew that the woman in the faded blue uniform had once been called a prodigy. Nobody knew that she could have been famous. And Alina thought that nobody would ever know. She thought her secret would die with her, buried deep in her heart where the music still played, silently, endlessly, for an audience of one. She was wrong. Alina was born in a small village called San Isidro, in the mountains of the Philippines. It was a poor place. The houses were made of bamboo and wood. The roads were dirt. Most families grew rice or caught fish to survive. Nobody had much money, but the people were happy. They had each other, and they had their faith. And they had the beautiful green mountains all around them. Elena's father, Roberto, was a farmer. He worked in the rice fields from sunrise to sunset. His hands were rough and brown from years of work. Her mother, Rosario, took care of their small house and their 7 children. Alina was the oldest. After her came 6 more brothers and sisters. The house was always full of noise and laughter and crying babies. The village had one church, and in that church there was one piano. It was very old. Some of the keys did not work anymore. The wood was cracked, and the sound was not perfect. But to young Alina, it was the most beautiful thing in the world. She discovered the piano when she was 7 years old. Her mother had sent her to the church to deliver some food for the priest. The church was empty that afternoon. The sunlight came through the colored windows and made patterns on the floor. And there, in the corner, was the piano. Alina did not know why, but she walked to it. She sat down on the bench. The keys looked like teeth, she thought. White teeth and black teeth, all in a row. She pressed one key. A sound came out. It was like magic. She pressed another key, then another. The sounds mixed together in the air. She did not know how to play. Nobody had taught her, but her fingers began to move on their own. She played a simple melody, something she had heard her mother singing while cooking. The notes were not perfect, but they were music, real music, coming from her own hands. That was when Mr. Santos found her. He was the music teacher at the school in the next town. He had come to the church to pray, but he stopped when he heard the sound of the piano. He stood in the doorway and watched the little girl with messy hair and bare feet play as if she had been doing it her whole life. When Alina finished and turned around, she was scared. She thought she was in trouble for touching the piano, but Mr. Santos was smiling. There were tears in his eyes. "Child," he said, "you have a gift from God." From that day on, Mr. Santos became Elena's teacher. He came to San Isidro every Saturday to give her lessons. He did not ask for money. He said that teaching her was a privilege. Elena's parents did not understand music, but they understood that their daughter was special. They let her practice at the church whenever she wanted. And Alina practiced. She practiced for hours every day. Her fingers grew strong and fast. Her ears learned to hear every tiny sound. By the time she was 10, she could play pieces that adult musicians found difficult. By 12, she was winning competitions in the nearby cities. By 15, she was famous throughout the province. People called her the piano girl of San Isidro. They came from other villages just to hear her play. The church was always full on Sundays, not just for the prayers but for Elena's music. Her father, Roberto, would sit in the front row with tears rolling down his cheeks. He did not understand classical music, but he understood that his daughter was doing something extraordinary. When Alina was 17, the impossible happened. She received a letter from the Manila Academy of Music. They had heard about her from Mr. Santos. They wanted to offer her a full scholarship. Everything would be paid for. Room, food, books, lessons. She would study with the best teachers in the country. She would have a future as a professional musician. The whole village celebrated. People brought food to Elena's house. They sang and danced. Elena's mother cried with happiness. Her father stood quietly in the corner, looking at his eldest daughter with pride and sadness mixed together. He was proud of what she had achieved, but he was sad because he knew she was going to leave. Elena packed her small suitcase. She did not have many things. A few clothes, some music books that Mr. Santos had given her, a photograph of her family. The night before she was supposed to leave, she could not sleep. She lay in bed and listened to her brothers and sisters breathing around her. She thought about the new life waiting for her in Manila. She was scared, but she was also excited. Finally, her dreams were coming true. The next morning, Alina woke up early. She put on her best dress, the one her mother had made for her. She said goodbye to each of her siblings. The younger ones did not understand why she was leaving. They cried and held onto her legs. Alina kissed them and promised she would come back to visit. Her father walked with her to the bus station. It was 3 miles away, along the dirt road that led out of the village. They walked in silence. There was too much to say, and no words seemed right. When they reached the station, Roberto hugged his daughter for a long time. "Make us proud," he whispered. make all of San Isidro proud. Elena was about to get on the bus when she heard shouting. She turned and saw her brother Miguel running toward her. He was only 12 years old, but he had run the whole 3 miles from the village. His face was red. His eyes were full of tears. "Elena, come back," he shouted. "Father is sick. Something is wrong with father." At first, Elena did not understand. Her father was standing right there next to her, but then she looked at Roberto. His face had gone pale. He was holding his chest. His legs were shaking. "Papa," Elena said. Roberto opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His eyes rolled back. His body fell to the ground like a puppet with cut strings. Elena screamed. She dropped her suitcase and ran to her father. People from the station came running. Someone said they needed a doctor. Someone else said the nearest hospital was 20 miles away. Elena held her father's head in her lap and cried. She begged him to wake up. She begged God to save him. The bus to Manila came and went. Elena did not get on it. Roberto survived, but he was never the same. The doctors said he had suffered a stroke. His right side was paralyzed. He could not walk. He could not work. He could barely speak. He would need care for the rest of his life. Elena looked at her family. Her mother was already old and tired from raising 7 children. Her siblings were too young to work. There was no one else. There was only her. She took the letter from the Manila Academy and tore it into pieces. She did not cry as she did it. She had already cried all her tears at the bus station. Now she felt only emptiness, like a piano with all its strings cut. "I will take care of the family," she told her mother. "I will find work." She got a job at a factory in the city. It was hard work and long hours. She sent money home every month. She watched her siblings grow up, go to school, and build their own lives. She never complained. She never spoke about the scholarship or the academy or the future she had lost. The piano in the church collected dust. Elena never played it again. 20 years later, she moved to America, following a cousin who promised there was work there. She cleaned houses, washed dishes and mopped floors. She saved every penny. She sent money back to the Philippines for her father's medicine, for her siblings' children's education, for her aging mother's needs. And she never, ever spoke about music. It hurt too much. It was like touching an old wound that had never healed, so she buried it deep inside her heart, where no one could see it, where even she tried not to look. But the music never really died. It was still there, playing silently in her dreams, waiting for the day it would be free again. It was the first Saturday of December, and the Harrington Conservatory was preparing for its biggest event of the year. The annual Winter Gala was a night when the richest people in Boston came together to support the school. They wore expensive clothes and expensive jewelry. They drank expensive wine and ate expensive food. And they wrote very large checks that kept the conservatory running for another year. Elena learned about the gala 1 week before it happened. Her supervisor, Mrs. Crawford, called all the cleaning staff together for a meeting. Mrs. Crawford was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She spoke in a voice that made everyone listen. "The gala is the most important night of the year," she said. "Everything must be perfect. The floors must shine. The windows must sparkle. Every piece of silverware must be polished. We will work extra hours this week. There will be no excuses for mistakes." The other cleaners groaned quietly. Extra hours meant more work but not more pay. Elena said nothing. She was used to hard work. She had been working hard her whole life for the next 7 days. Elena and the other cleaners worked from before dawn until late at night. They scrubbed and polished and vacuumed every corner of the building. The concert hall received special attention. The red velvet seats were cleaned one by one. The golden decorations on the walls were polished until they glowed, and the Steinway piano was covered with a special cloth to protect it from dust. Elena worked near the piano many times during that week. Each time, she paused for just a moment to look at it. Under the protective cloth, she could still see its shape. The curved body, the long keyboard, the elegant legs. It was like a sleeping beauty, waiting to be awakened. On the night of the gala, Elena was assigned to work as a server. This was unusual. Normally she only cleaned, but the gala needed extra hands, and Mrs. Crawford had chosen Elena because she was reliable and quiet. "Just carry the trays, fill the water glasses, and stay out of the way," Mrs. Crawford instructed. "Do not speak to the guests unless they speak to you first. Do not make eye contact. You are there to serve, not to be seen." Elena nodded. She understood. She had always understood. To the rich people at the gala she would be invisible. That was fine with her. She had been invisible for a very long time. The gala began at 7 o'clock in the evening. Elena watched from the kitchen as the guests began to arrive. They came in long black cars that stopped at the front entrance. Men in black suits, women in colorful gowns. Diamonds and gold sparkled everywhere. These people had more money than Elena would see in 100 lifetimes. The ballroom was decorated beautifully. There were flowers on every table. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, making the whole room sparkle with light. In one corner, a string quartet played soft music. In another corner there was a bar where guests could get drinks, and on a small stage at the front of the room, there was the Steinway piano, uncovered now, its black surface reflecting the lights like a dark mirror. Elena moved through the room with her tray. She offered water to guests who barely looked at her. She picked up empty glasses from tables. She kept her head down and her face blank. But inside she was watching everything. She watched the students of the conservatory, young men and women in formal clothes, talking to the rich donors with nervous smiles. She knew these students. She had cleaned their practice rooms for years. She knew which ones practiced until midnight. She knew which ones left candy wrappers on the floor. She knew which ones had real talent and which ones were only there because their parents had money. She watched the professors, gray-haired men and women who talked about music as if it were a religion. Dr. Harrison, the piano professor, was telling a group of donors about his latest student, a young man from Russia who could play Rachmaninoff like nobody else. The donors nodded and smiled, pretending to understand, and she watched the donors themselves. They were mostly old, mostly white, mostly very rich. They talked about business and politics and vacation homes in Europe. Some of them seemed to genuinely love music. Others seemed to be there only to show off their wealth and their good clothes. Around 9 o'clock, the director of the conservatory, Dr. Margaret Chen, stepped onto the stage. She was a small woman with black hair and kind eyes. Alina liked her. Unlike some of the professors, Dr. Chen always said hello to the cleaning staff. She treated them like human beings. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Chen said into the microphone, "thank you all for coming tonight. Your generous support makes it possible for talented young musicians to pursue their dreams." There was polite applause. Alina paused near the back of the room, holding her empty tray, and listened. "Tonight, we have prepared some special performances for you," Dr. Chen continued. "Our most talented students will show you why the Harrington Conservatory is one of the finest music schools in the country." For the next 2 hours, students took turns performing on the stage. A young woman played the violin beautifully. A young man sang opera with a voice that filled the room. 3 students performed a piece together, one on piano, one on cello, and one on clarinet. After each performance, the guests applauded politely and reached for their wine glasses. Alina watched every performance, but she watched the piano performances most carefully. A girl named Jessica played Beethoven. Her technique was good, but there was something missing. The notes were correct, but the music had no heart. It was like a painting done by someone who had studied the rules but did not understand the soul of art. A boy named Michael played Chopin. He was better than Jessica. His fingers moved faster, and there was some emotion in his playing. But still, Alina could hear the hesitation, the uncertainty. He was playing the notes that someone else had written. He was not truly feeling the music. As she watched, Alina's fingers moved slightly on the handle of her tray. She did not even notice she was doing it. Her fingers were playing along with the music, pressing invisible keys in the air. After 41 years, her hand still remembered. Near midnight, the formal performances ended, but the party continued. The string quartet started playing again. Guests gathered in small groups, talking and laughing and drinking more wine. The piano sat empty on the stage, waiting. Alina was clearing a table near the stage when she heard a voice behind her. "Look at her. She's staring at the piano." Alina turned around. A group of rich men were standing nearby, holding glasses of whiskey. They were looking at her with amused expressions. The one who had spoken was a large man with gray hair and a red face. His suit was expensive, but his tie was loose, and his words were slightly slurred. He had been drinking heavily all night. "I bet she wishes she could play." Another man laughed. "Can you imagine? The cleaning lady at the piano." Alina felt her face grow hot with shame. She picked up her tray and tried to walk away, but the large man stepped in front of her. Wait, he said. His breath smelled like alcohol. "I want to ask her something." He leaned closer to Alina. "Hey, you, the maid, do you play piano?" Alina did not know what to say. Her heart was beating fast. She wanted to run away, to hide in the kitchen, to disappear into the walls, but she could not move. "I asked you a question," the man said. His voice was getting louder. Other guests were starting to look. Alina opened her mouth, but no words came out. The man laughed. "I think she's scared," he said to his friends. "Don't worry, dear. It was just a silly question. Of course you don't play piano. Silly me." He turned back to his friends, and they walked away, laughing. Alina stood there for a long moment, holding her tray. Her hands were shaking. Something cold and hard was growing in her chest. It was a feeling she had not felt in many years. It was anger. The large man with the red face was named Richard Thornton. He was one of the richest men in Boston. He owned buildings, hotels, and shopping centers all over the country. Every year he gave more money to the conservatory than most people would earn in their entire lives. Because of this, people treated him like a king. They laughed at his jokes even when they were not funny. They agreed with his opinions even when they were wrong. They pretended not to notice when he drank too much and said cruel things. Richard Thornton was used to getting whatever he wanted. He was used to people being afraid of him. He was used to being the most important person in any room. And tonight, at the gala, he was bored. The performances were over. The food had been eaten. The polite conversation had grown stale. Richard stood near the bar with his group of wealthy friends, looking around the room for entertainment. That was when he saw Alina again. She was on the other side of the room, collecting empty glasses from a table. She moved quietly, carefully, like someone who was trying not to be noticed. But Richard noticed her. He noticed the way she kept glancing at the piano on the stage. He noticed the way her lips moved slightly, as if she was singing a silent song. He noticed the way her fingers tapped gently against the glasses she was holding. An idea formed in Richard's drunken mind. He smiled. "Hey everyone," he said loudly. "I have an idea for some entertainment." His friends looked at him with curious eyes. Other guests nearby stopped their conversations to listen. Richard loved being the center of attention. He raised his glass of whiskey and pointed at Alina. "See that woman over there? The cleaning lady," he said. "I think she wants to play the piano." There were a few nervous laughs. Some guests looked uncomfortable. Others looked amused. Alina froze in the middle of picking up a glass. She could feel everyone's eyes on her. "Oh, Richard, leave the poor woman alone," said one of the wives, a thin woman with a kind face. No, I'm serious," Richard said. He was enjoying himself now. He walked toward Alina, and the crowd parted for him like water for a ship. "You there, come here." Alina wanted to run away, but her feet would not move. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Richard stopped right in front of her, close enough that she could smell the whiskey on his breath. "What's your name?" he asked. "Alina," she whispered. Her voice was so quiet it was almost not there. "Alina," Richard announced loudly, as if introducing a guest of honor. "Tell me, Alina, do you play the piano?" Alina looked down at her feet. She did not know what to say. If she said no, she would be lying. If she said yes, they would laugh at her. Either way, she would be humiliated. Richard took her silence as an answer. "She does. Look at her face. She definitely plays." The room was very quiet now. Everyone was watching. Dr. Chen, the conservatory director, was trying to make her way through the crowd, but there were too many people in her way. She looked worried. "Well then," Richard said with a big smile, "why don't you play something for us?" A few people gasped. Others laughed nervously. Alina shook her head quickly. "No sir, I cannot," she said. "I am just here to work." "Nonsense," Richard boomed. "The performances are over. The piano is just sitting there. Why not let the cleaning lady have a turn?" "Richard, this is not appropriate," someone said from the crowd. But no one stepped forward to stop him. No one wanted to upset the man who gave so much money to the school. Richard grabbed Alina's arm gently but firmly. He led her toward the stage. Alina tried to resist, but she was small and tired and scared. And part of her, a small secret part that she did not want to admit, was curious. What would it feel like to sit at that beautiful piano? What would it feel like to play again after so many years? They reached the edge of the stage. The Steinway piano was right there, close enough to touch. Its keys shone white under the lights. Alina could almost feel the music trapped inside it, waiting to be released. "Go on," Richard said. "Give us a little tune, something simple." He laughed loudly. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." Perhaps the crowd laughed. It was not a kind laugh. It was the laugh of people who were watching something embarrassing happen to someone else. Alina felt tears forming in her eyes. This was the worst moment of her life. Worse than the bus station. Worse than leaving her dreams behind. Because at least back then, no one had been laughing at her. Dr. Chen finally made it through the crowd. "Mr. Thornton, please," she said. "This woman is a member of our staff. She is not a performer. Let me get you another drink, and we can forget about this." Richard waved his hand dismissively. "Oh, relax. It's just a bit of fun. What's the harm in letting her play a few notes? The harm is that you are embarrassing her," Dr. Chen said firmly. Richard's face changed. He did not like being told what to do. "I give this school more money than anyone else," he said coldly. "I think I can ask for a little entertainment in return." The room went silent. Everyone understood the threat. If Richard was unhappy, he might stop giving money. The conservatory needed his donations to survive. Dr. Chen opened her mouth to respond, but Alina spoke first. "I will play." Everyone turned to look at her. Alina's voice had been quiet, but there was something different in it now. Something hard. Something determined. Richard smiled triumphantly. "See, she wants to play. Let the woman play." Alina walked slowly toward the piano. Each step felt like she was walking through deep water. 41 years. It had been 41 years since she had touched a piano. Her fingers were older now. Her hands were rough from cleaning. She did not know if she could still play. But she was tired. Tired of being invisible. Tired of being laughed at. Tired of hiding the music that had lived inside her heart for so long. She reached the piano and stood beside it. Up close, it was even more beautiful than she had imagined. The wood was smooth and perfect. The keys were white and black, just like the piano in the church in San Isidro all those years ago. It was different, but it was also the same. A piano is a piano, and music is music. She sat down on the bench. It was too high for her, so she adjusted it lower. The crowd watched in silence. Some people were smiling, expecting something funny. Others looked uncomfortable, expecting something sad. Richard stood at the front of the crowd, holding his whiskey, waiting to be entertained. Alina looked at the keys. There were 88 of them, just like always. 88 possibilities, 88 pathways to the music in her soul. She placed her hands on the keys. They felt cool and smooth under her fingers. For a long moment, nothing happened. Alina sat there with her eyes closed, not moving, not playing. The crowd began to whisper. Was she going to do anything? Was she just going to sit there? Richard laughed quietly and whispered something to a friend. But Alina was not doing nothing. She was remembering. She was traveling back in time, back to the church in San Jose, back to Mr. Santos and his patient lessons, back to the competitions she had won, back to the letter from the Manila Academy, back to the bus station where everything ended. And then she traveled forward through the years of work and sacrifice, through the factory in the city, through the move to America, through the cleaning jobs and the empty apartments and the money sent home every month, through the 11 years at the conservatory, watching others live the life she should have had. She opened her eyes, she took a deep breath, and she began to play. The first note was wrong. Alina's finger pressed the key, and the sound came out, but it was not the note she had meant to play. Her hands were shaken, her heart was racing. The crowd shifted nervously. Richard Thornton smiled wider. Alina stopped. She lifted her hands from the keys and held them in her lap. They looked so old now. The skin was thin and spotted. The joints were thick from years of hard work. These were not the hands of a 17-year-old prodigy. These were the hands of a cleaning lady. What was she doing? What had she been thinking? But then something strange happened. A voice spoke in her mind. It was Mr. Santos, her old teacher. She could hear him as clearly as if he was standing right behind her. The piano does not care how old you are, Alina. It does not care what you do for work. It only cares about what is in your heart. Play from your heart, and the music will come. Alina closed her eyes again. She thought about her father, Roberto, lying in the hospital bed all those years ago. She thought about her mother, working so hard to keep the family together. She thought about her brothers and sisters, all grown up now with families of their own. She thought about her own children, born in America, who had never heard their mother play a single note. She thought about all the sacrifices she had made, all the dreams she had given up, all the years of silence. And then she stopped thinking. She placed her hands on the keys again. This time she did not try to play any particular song. She did not try to remember any piece she had learned. She just let her fingers move on their own. The first notes were soft and slow. They floated up from the piano like bubbles rising from the bottom of a lake. Simple notes. Nothing complicated. But there was something beautiful about them. Something true. Alina kept playing. The notes began to connect, to form patterns, to build on each other. Her fingers moved faster now. The music grew stronger. It was like a river starting from a tiny spring and growing wider and deeper as it flowed in the crowd. People stopped whispering. They stopped smiling. They stopped waiting for something funny to happen, because what they were hearing was not funny at all. It was something they had not expected. It was something that made them stand very still and listen. Alina opened her eyes. But she was not seeing the ballroom anymore. She was not seeing the rich people in their expensive clothes. She was not seeing Richard Thornton with his whiskey and his cruel smile. She was seeing something else entirely. She was seeing her father teaching her to plant rice in the fields of San Jose. She was seeing her mother singing lullabies to her baby brothers. She was seeing the green mountains of her homeland, covered in mist in the early morning. She was seeing the old church with the broken piano, where everything had begun, and she was seeing the bus station. The moment when her life had split in two. The moment when one path had closed forever and another path had opened. The music changed. It became darker, sadder. The notes fell like tears, like rain on a grave, like all the sorrow she had carried for 41 years. Finally being released, Mrs. Crawford, Alina's supervisor, had come out of the kitchen to see what was happening. She stood at the back of the room with her mouth open. She had worked with Alina for 11 years. She had never known. No one had ever known. Dr. Chen, the conservatory director, was crying. She did not even realize she was crying. The tears just ran down her cheeks as she listened to the music coming from the cleaning lady on the stage. The students of the conservatory, the young men and women who had performed earlier that night, watched with wide eyes. They were supposed to be the talented ones. They were supposed to be special, but none of them could play like this. None of them could make the piano sing like this. Alina's fingers danced across the keys. She was playing faster now, building towards something. The music rose and rose, growing louder and more intense. It was like a storm building on the horizon. Dark clouds gathering, thunder in the distance. And then it broke. A great wave of sound crashed from the piano. Alina's hands flew across the keyboard, playing notes that seemed impossible. The music was wild and fierce and beautiful. It was anger and sadness and joy all mixed together. It was everything she had kept locked inside her heart for 41 years. Finally being set free, some people in the crowd began to cry. They did not know why. They just felt something deep inside them breaking open. The music reached into their hearts and touched something they had forgotten was there. Richard Thornton was not smiling anymore. His glass of whiskey hung forgotten in his hand. His face was pale, and his eyes were wet. He looked like a man who had just realized he had made a terrible mistake. Alina played on. She did not know how long she had been playing. Time had stopped making sense. There was only the music, flowing through her like a river, like blood, like breath. She was not a cleaning lady anymore. She was not a 58-year-old woman with gray hair and worn-out shoes. She was 17 again. She was infinite. She was free. Her fingers found a melody she had not thought about in decades. It was a Filipino folk song, the one her mother used to sing while cooking dinner. Alina had arranged it for piano when she was 15 years old. She had played it at a competition and won first place. The judges had said it was the most beautiful thing they had ever heard. Now she played it again, but it was different now. 41 years of life had changed it. The happy melody was there, but underneath it was a sadness, a longing for home, for family, for all the things that had been lost. The room was completely silent, except for the piano. No one moved, no one spoke, no one even seemed to breathe. They were all caught in the spell of the music. Carried along like leaves on a wind, Alina could feel her mother standing beside her. She could feel her father's rough hand on her shoulder. She could feel Mr. Santos nodding in approval. She could feel all the people she loved, living and dead, gathered around her in that moment, and she understood, finally, that the music had never left her. It had been there all along, waiting patiently inside her heart, waiting for this moment, waiting to come home. Tears were streaming down her face now, but she did not stop playing. She could not stop. The music had taken control. It flowed through her fingers without effort, without thought. All she had to do was let it out. She did not know it, but she was playing Chopin now, the Ballade No. 1 in G minor, one of the most difficult pieces ever written for piano, a piece that took students years to master, a piece that concert pianists practiced for months before performing. Alina had not played it in 41 years, but her fingers remembered, her heart remembered, and the music poured out of her like water from a spring, pure and clear and endless. In the crowd, Dr. Harrison, the head of the piano department, was shaking his head in disbelief. He had taught piano for 30 years. He had trained some of the best young pianists in the country, but he had never heard anyone play like this. Not his students, not the famous performers who came to the conservatory, not even on the recordings of the great masters. This was something different. This was not just technique. This was not just skill. This was a soul speaking through music, and it was the most beautiful thing he had ever heard in his life. The Chopin Ballade has 4 main parts. It starts quietly, gently, like a storyteller beginning a tale. Then it grows, building through moments of passion and moments of peace. It takes the listener on a journey through every human emotion, and finally, it ends in a storm of sound, a great explosion of notes that leaves everyone breathless. Alina played all of it. Her small body swayed on the piano bench. Her gray hair had come loose from its bun and hung around her face. Her worn cleaning shoes pressed the pedals of the Steinway, but she did not look like a cleaning lady anymore. She looked like what she truly was, an artist, a musician, a master. During the quiet parts, she played so softly that people in the audience had to hold their breath to hear. The notes were like whispers, like secrets being shared in the dark. During the passionate parts, she played so loudly that the windows of the ballroom seemed to shake. The notes were like thunder, like waves crashing on rocks. And through it all, there was something that no one could describe with words, a feeling, an electricity, the sense that something magical was happening, something that would never be forgotten. In the middle of the piece, there is a part that is very difficult. The left hand must play one rhythm while the right hand plays another. The two hands must work separately and together at the same time. Many pianists struggle with this part. They lose the rhythm, or they hit wrong notes, or they slow down too much. Alina did not struggle. Her hands moved independently, like two dancers performing different dances that somehow fit together perfectly. The rhythm was complex, but she made it look easy. She made it look like the most natural thing in the world. Mrs. Crawford had moved from the back of the room to the middle. She was not supposed to be there. The staff were supposed to stay in the kitchen during events, but she could not stop herself. She had to get closer. She had to see this woman she had worked with for 11 years. This woman she had given orders to every day, doing something impossible. How did we not know? She whispered to herself. How did nobody know? The answer, of course, was simple. Nobody had asked. Nobody had looked at the cleaning lady and wondered who she really was. Nobody had thought that the woman in the blue uniform might have a story worth knowing. Alina reached the final section of the ballad. This is the most challenging part of all. The music becomes wild, almost violent. The notes come faster and faster until it seems impossible that human fingers could move that quickly. Many pianists fail at this part. They cannot keep up with the speed. They cannot maintain the emotion. But Alina was not thinking about speed or technique. She was not thinking at all. She was just feeling the music, feeling the story she was telling, feeling all the years of silence finally coming to an end. Her fingers flew across the keys. The music roared and crashed like a storm at sea. The audience watched in amazement as this small gray-haired woman attacked the piano with a power they could not understand. Where did it come from? How was it possible? The storm built and built, higher and higher, louder and louder. Alina's whole body was moving now, thrown by the force of the music. Her face was wet with tears, but she was smiling. For the first time in 41 years, she was truly happy. And then, suddenly it was quiet. The storm had passed. The final notes hung in the air like echoes of thunder. Alina's hands rested on the keys, pressing softly on the last chord. The Steinways sang one long, beautiful tone that slowly faded into silence. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. The ballroom was completely still. Alina sat at the piano with her eyes closed. She was breathing hard. Her heart was pounding. She did not want to open her eyes. She did not want to see the real world. She wanted to stay in that moment forever, in that place where the music still lived. But slowly she became aware of the silence around her. The strange, heavy silence. She opened her eyes and looked at the audience. Everyone was staring at her. Hundreds of faces, all frozen in shock. She saw tears on many cheeks. She saw open mouths. She saw eyes wide with disbelief. And then, from somewhere in the back of the room, one person began to clap. It was a slow clap, just two hands coming together, again and again. Alina could not see who it was, but slowly, other people joined in. 2 became 5. 5 became 20. 20 became everyone. The applause grew like a wave. It started as a quiet pattering like rain on a roof. Then it became louder, harder. People were not just clapping now. They were cheering. They were shouting. They were stamping their feet on the floor. Bravo, someone yelled. Incredible, shouted another. Who is she? Who is that woman? The applause went on and on. It crashed over Alina like an ocean wave, warm and powerful and overwhelming. She did not know what to do. She had not expected this. She had expected laughter. She had expected mocking. She had not expected this. People in the front row were standing up now, then the people behind them, then everyone, a standing ovation. For her, for the cleaning lady. Dr. Chen was the first person to approach the stage. She walked up the steps and stood beside Alina, who was still sitting at the piano, looking confused and dazed. My dear, Dr. Chen said gently, her voice thick with emotion. That was the most extraordinary performance I have ever witnessed in my 30 years at this conservatory. Please, tell me, who are you? Alina looked up at the director. Her lips trembled. Her voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. I am just the cleaning lady, she said. I am nobody. No, Dr. Chen said firmly. She took Alina's rough, worn hand in her own. You are not nobody. You are someone very special, and I think it is time the world knew it. The applause continued. It seemed like it would never stop. People were pushing forward, trying to get closer to the stage. They wanted to see the cleaning lady who had just performed a miracle. In the crowd, Richard Thornton was trying to move backward. He wanted to get away, to hide, to pretend this had never happened. His face was red, but not from alcohol this time. It was from shame. He had meant to humiliate this woman. He had meant to make fun of her. Instead, he had given her the chance to show the world who she really was. And in that moment, standing in the crowd of amazed people, Richard Thornton understood something. He was the rich man. He was the powerful man. He was the man everyone was supposed to admire. But tonight, Alina Marquez was the one they would all remember. The applause lasted for 12 minutes. Alina counted every one of them because she did not know what else to do. She sat at the piano bench, her hands folded in her lap, and watched as hundreds of people clapped and cheered for her. It was the strangest feeling of her life. Dr. Chen had to hold up her hand several times before the crowd finally quieted down. Even then, there were still sniffles and whispers throughout the room. People were shaking their heads. People were wiping their eyes. People were looking at Alina as if she was some kind of miracle. Please, please, Dr. Chen said into the microphone. I know we are all overwhelmed by what we have just witnessed, but I believe we all want to hear from this remarkable woman. Alina, will you say something? Alina looked at the microphone like it was a dangerous animal. She had not spoken to a crowd in 41 years. The last time had been at a competition in the Philippines, when she was still young and hopeful. Now she was old and tired, and she did not know what to say. But she stood up anyway. Her legs were shaking, but they held her. She walked slowly to the microphone. The room fell completely silent. She began, and her voice cracked. She cleared her throat and tried again. I do not know what to say. I have been silent for a very long time. Someone in the crowd called out, tell us your story. Alina looked out at the sea of faces. These were rich people, important people, people who had probably never cleaned a toilet in their lives. What could they possibly care about her story? But then she saw something that surprised her. She saw tears. She saw genuine emotion. She saw people who had been touched by her music and wanted to understand. My story is not so special, she said slowly. I was born in a small village in the Philippines. I learned to play piano when I was 7. I was told I had a gift. I worked very hard. I won a scholarship to music academy. She paused. The words she had not spoken for decades were coming out now, like water from a broken dam. But my father got sick. He could not work anymore. I was the oldest child. I had to take care of the family. So I did not go to academy. I went to work instead. I never played piano again. The room was so quiet that Alina could hear her own heartbeat. For 41 years, I did not touch a piano. I cleaned houses. I washed dishes. I sent money home. I did what I had to do. She wiped a tear from her cheek. I thought the music was gone forever. But tonight it came back. She stopped speaking. She did not know what else to say. The silence stretched on. Then, from the middle of the crowd, a man walked forward. It was Richard Thornton. His face was pale and his eyes were red. He looked like a different person from the drunk, arrogant man who had mocked her an hour ago. He walked all the way to the stage. He climbed the steps. He stood in front of Alina, and then he did something that shocked everyone in the room. He got down on his knees. "I am so sorry," he said. His voice was thick with emotion. "I am so deeply, deeply sorry. I treated you like you were nothing. I tried to humiliate you. I was cruel and thoughtless and wrong." Alina looked down at this powerful man kneeling before her. She did not know what to feel. Anger, satisfaction, pity, all of these things and none of them. "Please forgive me," Richard continued. "What you just did, what you just played, it was the most beautiful thing I have ever heard in my life, and I almost ruined it. I almost took this moment away from you." Alina was quiet for a long time. The whole room waited. Finally, she spoke. "I forgive you," she said softly. "You did not know. Nobody knows what is hidden in another person's heart." Richard looked up at her with grateful eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. He got to his feet slowly, like an old man. Though he was younger than Alina, he walked back to the crowd with his head down. Dr. Chun took the microphone again. "I think we have all witnessed something extraordinary tonight," she said. "Not just an amazing musical performance, but a lesson in humility and grace. Alina, on behalf of the Harrington Conservatory, I want to thank you, and I want to say that we have much to discuss about your future here." Alina shook her head quickly. No, I am just a cleaning lady. Tomorrow I will come back to work like always. We will see about that," Dr. Chen said with a small smile. The gala ended soon after, but nobody left right away. They gathered in small groups talking about what they had seen. They approached Alina one by one, shaking her hand, thanking her, telling her how moved they had been. Dr. Harrison, the piano professor, stood with her for a long time, asking questions about her training, her technique, her musical influences. Mrs. Crawford came to her last. Alina expected to be scolded for leaving her post, for making a scene, for embarrassing the conservatory, but instead, Mrs. Crawford took both of Alina's hands in her own. 11 years, she said quietly. "You worked for me for 11 years. I gave you orders. I told you to mop floors and clean toilets, and I never once asked who you were or where you came from." "That is okay," Alina said. "It was not your job to ask, but I should have. We all should have." Mrs. Crawford's eyes were wet. "I feel like I have been blind. All these years, you were right in front of me, and I never saw you." Alina smiled gently. "You see me now. That is what matters." The cleaning staff had been watching everything from the kitchen doorway. Now they came out, one by one, to hug Alina Maria, a young woman from Guatemala, Chen, an older man from China, Patricia, a single mother from the south. They were all invisible people, just like Alina, and tonight, one of them had been seen. When Alina finally left the conservatory, it was past 2 in the morning. The streets were empty and cold. She walked to the bus stop, her old shoes clicking on the pavement, and waited for the night bus. As she waited, she looked at her hands. The same hands that had mopped floors for 41 years, the same hands that had scrubbed toilets and washed dishes and sent money home. Tonight, those hands had played Chopin on a Steinway piano. Tonight, those hands had made hundreds of people cry. The bus came. Alina got on, showed her pass to the tired driver, and took a seat in the back. There were only a few other passengers, all of them returning from late-night jobs. Nobody looked at her. Nobody noticed her. She was invisible again, but something inside her had changed. She could feel it, like a warmth in her chest, like a light that had been turned on after years of darkness. The music was back, and this time, she was not going to let it go. When she got home to a small apartment, she did not go to bed. She sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea and looked out the window at the city lights. Her mind was full of memories and feelings and questions. What would happen tomorrow? Would anyone remember? Would her life go back to normal? Or had everything changed forever? She did not know. But for the first time in 41 years, she was not afraid of the future. She finished her tea, washed the cup, and finally went to bed. She slept deeply and peacefully, without dreams. And when her alarm went off at 4 o'clock, she woke up with a smile on her face. Whatever came next, she was ready. Alina did not own a smartphone. She had an old phone that could make calls and send text messages, but nothing else. So when she arrived at work on Monday morning, she did not understand why everyone was staring at her. Mrs. Crawford met her at the door. For the first time in 11 years, she did not immediately give Alina a list of tasks to complete. Instead, she took Alina by the arm and led her to the staff room. "Have you seen it?" Mrs. Crawford asked. "Have you seen the video?" "What video?" Alina asked, confused. Mrs. Crawford opened her own phone and showed Alina the screen. There, in a little rectangle, was Alina herself, sitting at the piano at the gala, playing Chopin. The video had been posted 2 days ago. It had been viewed 23 million times. 23 million, Alina repeated. She did not understand the number. It was too big. "And it is still growing," Mrs. Crawford said. "People are sharing it everywhere. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the news channels are talking about it. Alina, you are famous." Alina sat down heavily in a chair. Her legs felt weak. "I do not want to be famous," she said. "I just want to work. Mrs. Crawford laughed, but not in a mean way. I do not think that is going to be possible anymore. There are news vans outside the building right now. They all want to interview you. It was true. When Alina looked out the window, she could see several large vans parked on the street. People with cameras and microphones were standing on the sidewalk, waiting. They were all looking at the conservatory entrance. I cannot talk to those people, Alina said, panic rising in her voice. I do not know what to say. You do not have to talk to anyone you do not want to, Dr. Chen said, entering the room. But I think it might be good for you to tell your story. The world wants to know who you are. The world? Alina could not imagine the world caring about her. She was nobody. She cleaned floors. How could millions of people be interested in her life? But they were. Over the next few days, Alina learned just how interested they were. Journalists found her old village in the Philippines. They interviewed her mother, Rosario, who was 91 years old and still living in the same small house where Alina had grown up. Rosario cried when she saw the video of her daughter playing piano. She had not heard Alina play since she was 17. I always knew she was special, Rosario told the journalists, but she gave up everything for us, for her family. She is the most unselfish person I have ever known. They found Alina's brothers and sisters now scattered across the Philippines and around the world. They all had the same story to tell. Alina had worked so they could go to school. Alina had sent money so they could build houses and start businesses. Alina had sacrificed her own dreams so they could have theirs. They found Mr. Santos, Alina's old piano teacher. He was 93 years old now, living in a nursing home in Manila. When they showed him the video, he wept like a child. I knew this day would come, he said through his tears. I always knew her talent could not stay hidden forever. She was the best student I ever had. The best student anyone ever had. Back in Boston, Alina tried to continue her normal life. She went to work. She cleaned the practice rooms. She mopped the floors. But nothing was normal anymore. Students who had never looked at her before now stopped to shake her hand. Professors who had walked past her for 11 years now wanted to have long conversations about music. Even strangers on the street recognized her from the video and asked for photographs. You are the piano lady. A little girl shouted one day on the bus. My mummy showed me your video. It made her cry. Alina did not know how to handle the attention. She had spent 41 years being invisible. Now suddenly everyone could see her. It was overwhelming. It was exhausting. And sometimes, in her quiet moments, it made her cry. The offers started coming in on the third day. A record company wanted to sign her. A concert hall in New York wanted her to perform. A publisher wanted to write a book about her life. A movie producer wanted to make a film about her story. Alina said no to all of them. She was not ready. She needed time to think, time to understand what was happening to her. But there was one call she could not ignore. It came from the Philippines. It was her mother. Alina, my daughter, Rosario said, her voice thin and weak over the phone. I have seen the video. I have heard you play again after so many years, and I want you to know that I am proud of you. More proud than I have ever been of anything in my life. Alina started to cry. Mama, I am sorry. I am sorry I did not become what I was supposed to become. I am sorry I could not make my dreams come true. Rosario sounded surprised. Why are you sorry? You became exactly what you were supposed to become. You became a good person, a loving daughter, a caring sister. You took care of us when no one else could. That is more important than any music. But I gave up so much, Alina whispered. You gave. That is what you did. You gave. Rosario's voice was firm now. And now, God is giving back to you. Accept it, Alina, you deserve it. After the call, Alina sat alone in her apartment for a long time. She thought about her mother's words. She thought about her life. She thought about all the choices she had made, the roads she had taken and the roads she had left behind. Maybe her mother was right. Maybe everything had happened for a reason. Maybe the 41 years of silence had been a preparation, not a punishment. Maybe she had needed to live a full life before she could truly play the music in her heart. Or maybe there was no reason at all. Maybe life was just a series of events, one after another, with no plan and no meaning. Maybe she had simply been unlucky, and now she was lucky. It did not matter. What mattered was what she did next. Alina stood up. She walked to her closet and took out a box she had not opened in years. Inside were old photographs, letters and music books from her youth. There was a photograph of her at 17, standing next to Mr. Santos after a competition. There was the torn-up letter from the Manila Academy. The pieces saved all these years for some reason she did not understand. She held the pieces of the letter in her hands. They were yellow with age. The words were faded but still readable. We are pleased to offer you a full scholarship. A dream that had died 41 years ago. A door that had closed forever. Or had it? Alina put the pieces back in the box. She closed the lid. And she made a decision. She was done being invisible. She was done hiding her gift. Whatever happened next, she would face it with open eyes and an open heart. The music had come back. And this time, she would let the whole world hear it. 2 weeks after the gala, Alina received an official letter from the Harrington Conservatory. It was not like the letter she used to receive every month with her small paycheck. This one was printed on thick cream-colored paper. It had the conservatory's golden seal at the top. Dear Mrs. Marquez, the letter began, on behalf of the Board of Directors, the faculty, and the staff of the Harrington Conservatory of Music, we are writing to offer you a position as artist in residence. Alina read the letter 3 times. She did not understand all the fancy words, but she understood enough. They were offering her a job, not as a cleaning lady, as a musician. The letter explained what the position meant. She would have an office in the conservatory. She would have access to the pianos whenever she wanted. She would give occasional performances. She would teach master classes to advanced students. And she would receive a salary that was 5 times what she earned as a cleaning lady. Alina put down the letter. Her hands were shaking. This was more than she had ever dreamed of. This was everything she had lost at 17, given back to her at 50-8. So why did she feel so scared? She called her youngest daughter Maria. Maria was 32 years old and worked as a nurse in California. She was the child who looked most like Alina, with the same dark eyes and quiet smile. She was also the one Alina trusted most with her feelings. Mama, that is wonderful news, Maria said when Alina told her about the letter. You have to accept it. I do not know, Alina said hesitantly. It is too much. I am just an old woman who cleans floors. What do I know about being an artist in residence? You know how to play piano better than anyone in that whole school, Maria said firmly. Everyone saw the video. The whole world saw it. You have a gift, Mama. I had a gift 40 years ago. Now I am old. My fingers are stiff. My back hurts. I cannot perform like a young person. You performed 2 weeks ago, and it was the most beautiful thing anyone had ever heard. Did your fingers stop working? Did your back stop you? Alina was quiet. Her daughter was right, of course. When she had been playing at the gala, she had not felt old at all. She had felt like a young girl again, free and alive and full of music. I am scared, she admitted finally. I have been invisible for so long. I do not know how to be seen. Maria's voice softened. Mama, let me tell you something. When I was little, I used to wonder why you never played piano. We had that old keyboard at home, remember? The one you bought at a garage sale. But you never touched it. You would just look at it sometimes, when you thought no one was watching, and you had the saddest expression on your face. Alina remembered the keyboard. She had bought it when Maria was 5 years old. She had told herself it was for the children to learn music. But really, she had bought it because she could not stop herself. She had needed to have an instrument in the house, even if she never played it. I asked you once why you did not play, Maria continued. Do you remember what you said? Alina shook her head, even though Maria could not see her. You said, some doors close and never open again. That is life. I did not understand then, but I understand now. You gave up your dreams so we could have ours. You closed that door so we could walk through different ones. There were tears in Elena's eyes now. I had to. There was no other choice. I know, Mama, and we are grateful, all of us. But here is what I want to tell you. Maria's voice was strong and clear. The door is open again. After 41 years, it is standing wide open. And this time, you do not have to choose between your dream and your family. This time, you can have both. Alina was crying now. She could not help it. The tears fell down her cheeks and dripped onto the letter in her lap. You gave up your dream so we could have ours, Maria said again. Now it is your turn. Mama, walk through that door. We will be right behind you, cheering you on. After the phone call, Alina sat alone in her apartment for a long time. She looked at the letter. She looked at her old, tired hands. She thought about her life, the roads she had taken, and the roads she had left behind, and then she did something she had not done in 41 years. She walked to the closet and took out the old keyboard. It was dusty and some of the keys were broken, but when she plugged it in, it still worked. She sat down on a kitchen chair. She placed her hands on the keys, and she began to play. The sound was cheap and electronic, nothing like the beautiful Steinway at the conservatory, but it was music. Her music, the music that had been waiting inside her all these years. She played for an hour, then 2 hours, then 3. She played until her fingers were tired and her back was aching. She played until the sun went down and the streetlights came on outside her window, and when she finally stopped, she knew what she was going to do the next morning. She walked into Dr. Chen's office at the conservatory. She was still wearing her cleaning uniform. She had not even stopped to change. Dr. Chen looked up from her desk and smiled. Alina, please, come in. Sit down. Alina sat in the chair across from the director. She took a deep breath. I have thought about your offer, she said. And Alina reached into her pocket and pulled out the letter. It was wrinkled now from being read so many times. She placed it on Dr. Chen's desk. I accept, she said, but I have some conditions. Dr. Chen's smile widened. Tell me. First, I do not want a fancy office. I want to keep cleaning part-time. I like taking care of this place. It is my home that can be arranged. Second, I want to teach the students who cannot afford lessons. The poor students, the immigrants, the ones who have gifts but no money. We would be honored to have you teach them. And third, Alina hesitated. This was the hardest one. I want to go back to the Philippines, just for a visit, to see my mother before. She could not finish the sentence. Dr. Chen stood up and walked around the desk. She took Alina's hands in her own. Alina, you can take all the time you need. Your position will be waiting for you when you return. And if there is anything we can do to help with your travel, please let us know. Alina looked at this woman who had been her boss for so long, but now their relationship was different. Now they were colleagues. Now they were equals. "Thank you," Alina whispered. "Thank you for seeing me." Dr. Chen squeezed her hands. "Thank you for letting us see you at last." That evening Alina called Maria again. "I did it," she said. "I accepted the position." Maria screamed with joy so loudly that Alina had to hold the phone away from her ear. Then Maria started to cry. Then they both laughed. It was the happiest Alina had felt in years. "There is one more thing," Alina said when they had calmed down. "I am going to the Philippines to see your grandmother, and I want you to come with me." "Mama, I do not know if I can get time off work." "Please," Alina said. "I want her to meet you before. I want you to know where you come from. I want you to see San East. I want you to hear the stories." Maria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I will find a way. I promise." When Alina hung up the phone, she looked around her small apartment. It looked different now. Smaller, yes, but also brighter, as if someone had cleaned the windows and let the sunlight in. She had spent 41 years in the shadows. Now, finally, she was stepping into the light, and she was ready to shine. 6 months later, Alina Marquez stood backstage at Carnegie Hall in New York City. She was wearing a simple black dress that her daughter Maria had helped her choose. She wore no jewelry except for a small gold cross that had belonged to her mother. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun. Her worn hands were folded in front of her. She was terrified. Carnegie Hall, the most famous concert venue in the world, the place where the greatest musicians in history had performed, and in just a few minutes, a 59-year-old cleaning lady from the Philippines was going to walk onto that stage. How had this happened? How had her life changed so completely in just 6 months? After accepting the position at the Harrington Conservatory, Alina had thrown herself into music with all the energy she had. She practiced for hours every day. She studied the pieces she had learned as a teenager and taught herself new ones. She worked with Dr. Harrison, the piano professor who became her coach and her friend. She also traveled to the Philippines. She spent 3 weeks in San Isidro with her mother, her brothers and sisters, and their children. She visited the old church where she had first discovered the piano. She stood in front of the graves of her father and Mr. Santos, who had both passed away years ago, and she played. She played for her family in the little house where she grew up. She played for the children of the village in the church. She played for everyone who wanted to hear her. When she returned to America, she was different, stronger, more confident, ready to share her gift with the world. The invitations kept coming, small concerts at first, then bigger ones. Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, Los Angeles. Wherever she played, the halls were full. People came from all over to hear the cleaning lady with the magic fingers. The critics did not know what to make of her. She was not like other pianists. Her technique was not perfect. She made small mistakes sometimes, but there was something in her playing that no one could describe. A depth, a feeling, a story in every note. Alina Marquez does not just play music. One famous critic wrote, "She becomes the music. Watching her perform is like watching a soul set free." And now, here she was. Carnegie Hall, the biggest stage of all. A young woman with a clipboard approached her. "Mrs. Marquez, it is time." Alina took a deep breath. She closed her eyes and thought of all the people who had brought her to this moment. Her father, who had walked her to the bus station all those years ago. Her mother, who was sitting in the front row right now, having traveled outside the Philippines for the first time in her 92 years. Mr. Santos, whose voice still echoed in her mind. Her children and grandchildren, who were scattered throughout the audience. Her brothers and sisters, who had come from around the world to be here. And Richard Thornton, who had called her yesterday to wish her luck. They had become unlikely friends in the past 6 months. He had donated money to create a scholarship fund for underprivileged music students in Alina's name. He said it was his way of trying to make up for what he had done. "I cannot make up for it," he had told her. "I know that, but I can try to make something good come out of something bad." Alina had forgiven him completely. She understood that people could change. She herself was proof of that. Now she opened her eyes and smiled at the young woman with the clipboard. "I am ready," she said. She walked through the dark hallway toward the stage. She could hear the murmur of the audience on the other side of the curtain. 3,000 people, waiting to hear her play. 3,000 strangers who had paid money and traveled great distances, just to sit in this room and listen. The house lights dimmed. The murmur faded to silence. A stagehand pulled back the curtain, and Alina stepped into the light. The stage was enormous, much bigger than any stage she had performed on before. In the center, a beautiful Steinway grand piano gleamed under the spotlights. Beyond it, rows and rows of seats stretched back into the darkness. Alina walked slowly toward the piano. Her worn shoes clicked softly on the polished wood floor. She could feel 3,000 pairs of eyes watching her every step, and then the applause began. It started in the front row, where her family was sitting. Her mother, tiny and white-haired, was clapping with all her strength. Her children were on their feet, tears streaming down their faces. Her brothers and sisters were shouting her name. The applause spread like a wave through the hall. Row after row of people stood up. They clapped. They cheered. They called out words of encouragement. Alina had not even played a note yet, and already they were welcoming her like a hero. She reached the piano and turned to face the audience. She could see her mother in the front row, her wrinkled face shining with pride. She could see Maria, her youngest daughter, holding up a phone to record this moment. She could see strangers crying, moved by something they could not yet explain. Alina placed her hand over her heart and bowed. The applause grew even louder. She had to wait almost 2 full minutes before it died down enough for her to sit at the piano. She adjusted the bench. She placed her hands on the keys. She closed her eyes, and then she began to play. She had chosen a special program for tonight. It began with Chopin, the same ballade she had played at the gala 6 months ago. But this time, she played it differently. She was not playing from anger or sorrow anymore. She was playing from joy, from gratitude, from love. The music filled the great hall, rising up to the golden ceiling, echoing off the walls, wrapping around every person in every seat. It was the same melody, the same notes, the same technical challenges, but the feeling was completely different. This was not a story of loss. This was a story of finding. After the Chopin, she played Beethoven, then Rachmaninoff, then Liszt. Each piece was more challenging than the last. Each piece showed a different side of her heart, and then, for her final piece, she played something no one expected. It was a simple folk song from the Philippines, the same song her mother had sung while cooking dinner in their little house in San Isidro, the same song Alina had arranged for piano when she was 15 years old, the same song she had played at competitions and won first place. It was not a famous piece. It was not technically difficult, but as Alina played it, every person in Carnegie Hall understood why she had saved it for last. This was her home. This was where she came from. This was the music that had lived in her heart through 41 years of silence, waiting to be heard. In the front row, her mother was sobbing. She remembered this song. She remembered singing it while Alina sat on the floor and played with blocks. She remembered the little girl with the messy hair who could make any piano sing. That little girl was a woman now, an old woman with gray hair and worn hands. But the music was still there. The gift was still there. Nothing had been lost. Everything had just been waiting. Alina struck the final chord. The note hung in the air for a long moment, pure and beautiful. Then it faded into silence. The audience erupted. The applause was like thunder. It rolled through the hall, crashing against the walls, shaking the very floor. People were on their feet, screaming, crying, calling her name. The ovation went on and on. 11 minutes, 12 minutes, 13. Alina stood and faced the audience. She looked at her mother. She looked at her children. She looked at the 3,000 strangers who had come to hear her story, and she smiled. She had been asked for a simple tune. Instead, she had given them a masterpiece. Not just tonight. Her whole life was the masterpiece. Every sacrifice she had made, every year of silence, every moment of pain and longing and hope, it had all led to this. She was not famous for being extraordinary. She was beloved for being unbroken. Alina raised her hand and waved to the audience. The applause continued. The lights were bright and warm on her face, and somewhere deep in her heart, she could hear Mr. Santos say, "I always knew this day would come. The music never leaves us. It only waits." He was right. The music had waited 41 years, and now, finally, it was free.